You have choice. You have always had choice. What change can we be today? What action can we take to create a future of greater possibilities? Welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast with your host, Simone Milasas. Hi everybody, welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast, and welcome to YouTube. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can get to see our faces, and if you're listening to this, then maybe check out the YouTube channel so that you can actually, see our bright shining faces as well. So I'm in day 9 still, hotel quarantine, recording this podcast. I think there's a bunch of podcasts that I'm doing in here. Why not utilize the time, and today I have a very special guest, Shannon O'Hara. Welcome. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. Hello, everybody.
It's funny when I have someone on, it's like there's this download that you get, and it's like I remember. You're Gary Douglas's daughter, the founder of Access Consciousness. So of course you were around before me, And then when I came to Santa Barbara, I think it was Santa Barbara that I came to. And I remember sitting at this table at a restaurant, this big long table, and you have this is such a beautiful, intense way of being with people and looking at people that they start to look within, is probably a way I would describe it. And I remember you sitting at the other end of the table and you were looking at me like checking me out, like, who is this? It's almost, I actually don't know to this day what was going on for you in your head, but it was almost this place of like, am I going to let her in? Am I, is she going to stay around? Like, is she interested in consciousness, or is she interested in something else or whatever? Like, it was just this interesting energy.
I might
So
have also just been being a bitch. I was maybe 20. So here we are a million years later,
yeah.
I have no idea what I was thinking. I might have just been being mean. That could have totally been possible.
I don't know about that. But anyway, here we are today. And one of the topics that I wanted to talk about today with you is money. And for a few different reasons. I actually, this afternoon, one of the things that I was, working away, doing different things, and I started listening because I was on your money series. And guys, please check out Shannon O'Hara's podcast. You do an absolutely phenomenal job. You are there's a few people, less than a handful of people, that I actually recommend their podcasts, and yours is one of them, because every single person you interview or the topics you choose, what I notice is you're so present with it, and it's a real gift. So please, guys, check out Shannon O'Hara's podcast. She also uploads them onto YouTube. I actually copy you a lot when you do things. I go, hey, Shannon just did this. We should do this, or we should create it, just to give you a heads up. So anyway, I've been listening to your money series, which I was on, and I've listened to the one with David Kubis and the one with Steve Bowman so far. And one of the things that you said to me a while ago is, nobody ever asked me about money.
Yeah.
And you've created a lot of money.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'd like to do that and have that podcast to actually ask you about money. So the first question I'd actually like to ask you is, what does money mean to you?
Joy, 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 joy.
And I love the look on your face and the seal clapping and everything like that. And you actually really mean that. Like, I've heard you talk about how much you just love money. So can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's almost like that's not the thing you're supposed to do. If you have money, you're not supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to be like, I love money. Like, let's raise the roof. Yay, let's celebrate money. But you do celebrate money.
Yeah, it's it's a bit more than celebrating money, but it definitely, what it is, it's money is part of this bigger spectrum of creation. And so when you say, like, what is money to you, it's like joy. It's like, literally, I mean that. It's not like I have money, therefore I'm joyful. It's not like it's a positive judgment of, I'm right about money, therefore I'm happy. It's really literally like, I guess, like, imagine like the thing you love. Like, I think for a lot of people can maybe relate to this, like, if you're an animal person, like if you have a pet that you like just love, or if you're a shoe person and you have a ton of shoes and you've got that one pair of shoes that every time you put it on, it's just like that yes place for your body. It's like it's the pair of shoes that just makes your body sing. Or if you're a person that's into exercise, is like your favorite form of movement. Or, you know, everybody has their like areas of that like one thing. Like if you're a chef, it's like that one dish or that one time you learn that. It's like that one thing that is that like joy point in your world. And for all of us, it's different. We don't all have the same form of joy point. But for me with money, like I never realized that it could be that. But the more and more I chose like my reality with money, I realized that a huge cornerstone of how it works for me is joy, meaning like if I choose towards the joy, the money always works. And that's a really important statement because it has nothing to do with like right money practices or knowing how to do money right. It's this other way of doing it, which is if I, you know, choose this, like if I, which choice makes me most joyful, and then always choosing towards the joy, no matter what the price.
So it's interesting as you said those things about like, you know, a chef, pair of shoes, you know, animals, all that sort of thing, because and you were talking referring to that as joy. Because what was coming up for me is the comfort and the knowing. You know, like they say a movement with your body that you enjoy. It's like you know it and it's comfortable. Those pair of shoes that you slip on. So what I'm going to ask you is, has money got that energy for you that you actually know it and it has a comfort to it? Because there's a lot of people who are shit scared of money.
Yeah, and I think money is the one is really gets the bad rap because when you say people are shit scared of money, I don't actually think it's the money that they're scared of. I think it's all everything that comes along with the money. Like money has a power. You know, there's the statement we all know, who he who has the gold rules. You know, I was just I was having breakfast with my husband a couple of days ago, and I was sitting there and I was like tripping out on corporations and how big they are. And I was like, and I was thinking like, how does that get started? You know, those corporations that you've like never heard of, but they're like billion-dollar industries and they're like these multi-conglomerates of like doing things in industries that you don't even know what that means, like when you hear the title. And I was thinking about that and I was like, yeah, but how does that get started? Like, where does that begin? And I like followed it back to like, well, it must start with like a person. Like a person starts that. So I like was like, well, who started Exxon? And like I went back and I Googled it and JD Rockefeller or Rothschild. I'm so dyslexic, it's horrible. He was the start of the like that oil tycoon industry.
Right.
Rockefeller? Rothschild? And I was thinking about him and I was like, and immediately when I read his name, I was like, it was like all these evil connotations come up when you hear about this, like, you know, the oil
Yeah, well,
tycoons, the
but
oil
those
barons.
two names that you mentioned don't
Rothschild,
exactly have
yeah,
this, like, yeah.
yeah. And I watched and I thought about that and I was like, how interesting. I was like, why do people like that? Like, how did he have where did the choice come from for in his world to generate and create the level of
Hmm.
financials, let's just put it that way, that he and let's just talk about let's talk about Rockefeller, not the Rothschilds because that's a family. Let's talk about the Rockefeller. Like, where did that choice come from? And my husband was like receiving, like just willing to receive everything. And I realized that the like that energy that came up for me when I read the Rockefeller name was like all these judgments, but then realizing that like Rockefeller was willing to have all that. He was willing to be the evil, you know, billionaire and the
Yeah.
philanthropist and the all this and there's places that I looked at that as like, am I willing to be seen as like the wrongdoer with money? And it was like, no. So that's an area of receiving that I've like cut off, and it has nothing really to do with money. It has to do with receiving, and it has to do with having that kind of power. Do I trust myself with that kind of power? What would I do if I had all the money in the world?
But that's interesting because when you talk about Rockefeller and say that, when you ask that question, what came up for me was that he chose all of that for control. And I don't know, it's like I would look at that and say there's a lot of people in the world that actually choose money for control. So then my question to you is, what do you choose money for?
Oh, joy.
Let's go back to
So
joy, kids.
yeah, yeah. So joy. So my joy, first of all, but also the facilitation of joy in the world. So it's like if there isn't joy attached to it, it isn't my financial reality. And I've looked at that a lot because I've been an access facilitator since my early 20s, and it's been my primary profession. It's been my primary career. It's my industry. I trade in the commodity of access consciousness. That's my resource, that's my commodity, and I'm pretty good at it. And how does it get better? I'm getting better all the time. And I've looked at that since I started Access at such a young age. I sort of was like exempt. I was a Pilates instructor in my early 20s as well. So that was sort of like my this reality job. And, but I've looked at like, as I've amassed more money through the facilitation of Access, I've looked at like, what should I do with this money? And that's like, should I invest it? I should be doing something else. Like there's all the points of view that people have about your money should be making money, or it's like, are you making enough interest in the bank? Are you buying stocks and bonds? Are you like you should turn all your cash into gold because like the USD is like devaluing right now. It's like there's so much information and so many points of view from so many people about what's the right thing to do with money. And as soon as I start,
correct. You really are. It's like, and it's almost like people start to avoid money because they don't want to face
deal with all that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so what's really worked for me, my tried and true and tested like method, is that if it doesn't have joy, it isn't going to work for me financially. And I know that not
I love that.
theoretic. I know it not just by theory, but I know it through practice. I've got 20 years of putting this to the test and really watching how it works. So if it isn't joyful for me, it isn't the right way to do for me. And I think that that's what really sets me apart, is that I actually have my own financial reality and I trust my way with money. I am not looking outside of me for what I should do based on everyone else's point of view about what works.
Oh, I love that, Shannon. And so I just want to say out there too, for everybody listening and everywhere that you've been avoiding money based on the projections of you've got to make the right choice with your money, everything that is and everything that you brought from your friends and your family and your culture and everyone around you, will you please destroy and uncreate it? Right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pot, all nine shorts, boys, meons. And a great question that I ask a lot, and it's a question that really got me to start to have a look at my own finances, was if I was choosing my reality with finances today, what would I choose? And I think that's what, like, I love that you are opening up this door, Shannon, to a different possibility, with money. And I've heard you say, and I also know a lot of things that you have contributed to, that you have used your money to contribute to different, foundations, etc., or different things that you perceive are creating greater good in the world and be able to change people's lives. And I know that Gary Douglas said that many years ago, what if money was to change people's lives? And that's something that I am actually really stepping into a hell of a lot at the moment. It's really funny because I have contributed to class action suits in Australia. There's this Police for Freedom, all these police who are breaking away from the police force and have a class action suit, in the federal law thing at the moment. So I did that. It's like I helped pay for this Aboriginal elder to get out of jail because, he pretty much got put in jail for not wearing a mask. But in truth, what he was doing, it was one of the most beautiful speeches I ever heard, was he said, we're here for the people, and there's 25 million people in Australia. It was not this divide between, Indigenous and the other Australians. And I was like, man, this dude, and then he got, arrested and put in jail. So it's like having money, like for me, I'm noticing having money to contribute to these people around the world that I can go, hey, what can I contribute to you? Can I contribute some change?
Right.
Has been a real joy for me.
Well, you and I both share, I know that you and I share a very similar preference towards benevolence. I know that is true for us. We're both like, we were both idealistic hippies who were like, can't the world be a kinder, brighter, better place? And then we got to be like rich hippies who now can actually utilize the gift of generating money. Because I would also say, like, you and I have an aptitude for money, and I think that it's very easy to hear conversations like this and go into the wrongness of you because you either, I don't know, I don't think money's everybody's cup of tea. I don't really get, like, some people might be better at raising children, like legitimately raising children. There's, everybody has their place. It's like, I don't think everybody should be balling with money. It's not like that's necessarily required. Like, nature diversifies. So for whatever reason, you and I are just,
that's a really cool point. I just want to reiterate that because a forest isn't just one tree.
Yeah.
A forest is this diversity of trees that creates the forest. So thank you for saying that. Yeah, because if money doesn't bring you joy, and it's not this thing that you have, like you said, like that'd be my worst nightmare, raising a whole bunch of kids. Like I would be really shitty at it. And it's
And I
like,
would
but
too. And I would
yeah,
too. But if you put me to financial practice for a community, I can create revenue for everybody and support the community. Like that I can do with pleasure, with joy. Like
yes,
as
me
I said,
too.
but I don't want to run the daycare and I do not want to raise the children. And as a woman, it's sort of like that's like almost inappropriate to say, but I'm so much better with money than I am with like that sort of thing. So I don't think everybody, I don't, these often with these conversations, I'm aware of this. I'm talking about money to a very small percentage of people who actually have a tremendous interest and aptitude with money, which is a small minority, which isn't because people who aren't interested in money are wrong at all. I sort of think like if we went back to, oh, I can go so many directions. Anyways,
Sure.
your reality, the way you do it is relevant. Like, I don't think we should all be looking at it the same way. So that's important for people to get, like, what is it that you do well and do easily? And that is your contribution and gift to the world. Um, I just happen to do money really easily, which I find strange, but awesome. And I'm grateful. But I have an incredible interest in money that I know almost no one else who does. So
I love that you said that. Like, thank you so much for empowering everyone to get that too. And it's funny because I just went to El Lugar in Costa Rica, which is the property that we are building there. We're building a whole resort there, and it's just done so beautifully. It's amazing. Now, one of the guys who's working there, Juan is his name. We met him like, I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that when he was working at another resort in Costa Rica, and he was the gardener. And he is one of the most joyous, beings that I've ever met. And the gardens would just flourish, and the way he was with it, and he would cut you flowers and stuff like that, and he'd leave you this little flower, at your door of your room, etc. Or if he knew it was your birthday, he would do this most beautiful, beautiful bouquet of, wild flowers and have it on your bed when you got back from class. And it was just such a gift. And he is such a gift. And now he's actually working at Elugar, and he is the one that we have this huge section where we're growing all these plants so that we can replant them, around the cusses that we're building and everything. Now, money is not what drives him. So thank you so much for saying that. I'm really grateful that you brought that up because money's not what drives him. It's this joy and the way he works with the nature. So guess what? The money that we create can also contribute to him being all of that, like being him. So thank you, thank you,
yeah.
thank you.
Can I also say too,
Yeah.
it's not the money that drives me either. It's 100% the creation, and money is a byproduct of that creation. Most people I think don't really know what money is. So when we talk about it, it's like it has all these things attached to it that it isn't. But if you go back and back and back, and if you want to learn like the history of money, I would recommend this series, or it's a book written by a Scottish professor named Neil. I can't remember his second name. Anyways, it's called The Ascent of Money. It's a book, but it's also
The what of money?
The Ascent of Money.
The Ascent.
And it's on YouTube too. They made like a mini television series from the book, and it's all on YouTube. It's like, I think 5 episodes, and it's everything. I love him. I love the way he talks about money. I love the way he talks about the history of money. But essentially, I mean, money is what was created to facilitate easier trade. And that's all. Like, I love commerce. I love the hustle. I love to create, and I love to trade.
And you love to receive. Can we talk about the receiving aspect? Because you also like to work hard. Like you don't sit around just waiting for something to show up. You do work hard. Like I've seen you, involved in a lot of different things. So can you sort of address that piece with the, work hard versus receiving, or both, or how do they hold hands, or what
I
comes
would
up?
say, it's funny when you say work hard. I wouldn't actually say I work hard. I would say I have to create. I have to. Otherwise, I feel horrible.
Yeah.
So it's I don't I wouldn't call it working hard. I would more say like I have to create. Like I have to create, otherwise I just don't feel good. Like I know that like if I'm poopy or I just don't feel like I just don't feel good, I know if I get creating, I always feel better. Not necessarily creating the thing I think I should, but if I have to find the joy point. Joy is like a huge,
Yeah.
huge key for me. It's like where my compass points. If I can find where the joy is, I know I'm always going in a generative direction. Joy never leads me wrong, even if I don't agree with the methods in which I have to get to the joy. If I just go for the joy, it always works. So I have to create. And so
I was just going to say, you've mentioned a couple of things that I just want to sort of expand on as well. And it's interesting because, like I said, I'm in day 9 quarantine here. And there was a few days ago, I started watching TV, Netflix at like, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And by about 7 o'clock, I was just fully binging. I was just like, bleh. I was
yeah,
like
yeah,
drudgery
yeah.
stuff. So then I went, okay, Simone, what are you going to choose tomorrow? And I made this demand on myself that I wouldn't start watching Netflix until at least 5 o'clock because I've got so much to create. I've got so many things to work on, right? And it's interesting. I'll do whatever. I mean, it's 4:30 now, and I haven't, but I've still got all these things I want to create. I want to touch on that thing too that you were saying that brings you joy, because for me, organization is joyful for me. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I've been doing here in quarantine is literally doing things like going through my phone and deleting stuff, or going through my notes and going, okay, like putting them into folders, and it's like, it's something that is like quote unquote time consuming. Going through my Telegram, I've learned some new tips on how to use that, and creating these folders. But it's the organization is joyful for me. It creates a greater world. So this joy doesn't have to be like, yeah, I'm doing a class, or I'm like, but like this big thing. It could just be like, maybe you like to get organized, or something like that. So, and
Well,
the third thing that you mentioned that I would like to just sort of reiterate again as well is most, a lot of my podcasts I have referred to humanoids and the difference between human and humanoids, and most humanoids do not create for money. They don't, that's not what drives them. It's like
no.
you need to start educating yourself about money because you create, 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 and then you're like, oh, money. And it's like, I definitely, I mean, if you've read my books, etc., or whatever, it's like, I definitely never created for money, ever created for money. Now I've learned to
Can I
receive money. Yeah, go.
can I add to that? So that think about create, 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 and then I think you just said, and then the money. But I actually don't know that that's true for everybody. I think there is a particular choice that actualizes money, that isn't necessary. Like there is like you could like there's a difference between creating. Like there's a difference between doing a lot of stuff, being busy, and creation that leads to actualization of X, Y, and Z. And that's a huge difference. One of the things that you and I know is this stuff about a piece of information called distractor implants. And there's a lot of distractor implants. And essentially, when you're in a distractor implant, it's that sense of like always being on a hamster wheel or being on a treadmill that like never ends. Like it just is never ending. And one of the distractor implants is business. And so if you look at the way that a lot of people do busyness in this reality, it's this sort of groundhog day of the same thing day in and day out, or doing a lot of stuff as though that's creation, or doing a lot to prove that you're valuable or to prove that you be. And as soon as you're in that doing as a busyness to prove, or to achieve something that you think is right or that you should, that's the danger zone. That's where you're diverting the lion's share of your generative energy into what will never work. So knowing where to flow the energy so it does work, and in my case I've explained the joy thing. Like if I can find the joy, and there's a million ways in which I find the joy point for me, then I know that if I flow energy towards that, it will actualize. Like literally, stuff shows up. So, I think with the work hard and the creation thing, it's easy to misinterpret that as doing more or being
Yeah.
busy, and that's absolutely not what we mean, because we do not live in a world of, well, You can live in the world of endless doing, or you can live in the world of ask and receive. And that ask and receive universe is far more where you and I function from with money, which is like, it's like a mystery. It's like the astrophysics of consciousness. It's in its simplicity, ask and receive somehow seems to be the most complicated, unachievable thing for most people.
I know. I always refer to this thing, like even when I was in debt, like I mean, the second book I wrote was Getting Out of Debt Joyfully. Even when I was in debt, I was still making money. I was still receiving money. Like, I was just in debt. I was just spending a hell of a lot of money. It wasn't like I was this, functioning from this like, oh my God, I'm so broke. I was still receiving. I was still, like I always said, I don't know what, if it's a different blood running through your veins that, the ability to actually create money, even when I was in debt. Hey, I want to come just break down a little bit when you said like there's a million ways that you can look at what actually brings you joy. Is there anything that you can talk about with that? Like give a few
Yeah,
examples or yeah.
definitely. So, like what you said when you were like watching Netflix all day, and then you got to the end of the day and you were like, bleh, like, okay, that didn't make me feel better. So, um, it's definitely something that I explore all the time. It's like, what's going to create the most joy? So for you, you're talking about organization, and I actually share that love for organization too. Like I love organization. I'm extremely organized, and I think I annoy everybody around me because I'm always like wanting everyone to get organized all the time. But I also know that like movement, like so physical movement, whether it's walking, yoga, exercise, Pilates, like doing a bunch of lunges, like I have to move my body. That's a huge. I remember when I was first like changing my like financial direction. So in my early 20s, I created huge credit card debt. Well, it actually wasn't huge, but now that I look back on it, it wasn't huge. But at the time, it was like I was drowning. It was completely insurmountable to me. And I started finally I got to the point where I was like, okay, I have to change this. And I started listening to the Gold Club, which is I actually just listened to call one from the Gold Club yesterday. I like dug it out of the archives, and I was listening to, which was a membership club that Gary and Dane did starting, it was in 2010. So I listened to call one, January 2010 Gold Club, and it was like everything. It is every financial like awareness from the very foundation in its most simple form is like in that class. Um, so my point being, yeah, I
You
started.
always rave about that, and I just wrote it down. I'm writing all these things down that I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
I can do this during quarantine. So it's like, yeah.
yeah.
We
So
will
the
have
Gold
the
Club,
link in the show notes of where you can actually buy this Gold Club because I think you can buy the whole year long
yes,
series.
you
So I'll
can.
find that for you guys and we'll have it in the show notes.
And my husband just re-updated the titling and the imagery, so when you buy it, it'll have beautiful images and show up in your iTunes all in order. And it was great to get to do that for the Gold Club because it was such a huge. It was what turned the ship around for me. Of course, my choice too, but the Gold Club. So I would go for these walks, and I'd listen to the Gold Club like every day, but I'd have to go walking while I did it. And I never really put together the two, that I was walking and I was moving while I was listening. But one of the ways in which what works for me is to add movement to the facilitation and transformation of my consciousness. Who
Yeah.
knows why that works for me, but for me, I got to move. And so if I don't like, even though I'll have some days where I'm at the computer and I'm working, and all of a sudden I'll feel like I'm going to explode, like I'm going to explode. And I know now that that's my body giving me the cue. Okay, you sat, you created and generated this energy this way. Now go move. And so I'll go move really intensely. Like I'll go really intense into the energy, and that movement of my body facilitates the actualization of everything I was working on in ways that it wouldn't unless I moved my body. It's one of those phenomenons. I just know it works for me. I have to move, and that's part of what contributes to the creation. Um,
I
and
love that.
it's
I'm
so it
so similar.
that's like a piece of joy for me. It's with my body, but I think everybody needs to. It's and then sometimes my body doesn't want to move. Sometimes my body doesn't want to sit in front of the computer, and I'm like, okay, so like, where's this creative energy? And sometimes it's literally just like relaxing, and that's another component of joy, which is I gravely underestimated because it just doesn't seem like it's doing anything. It's so easy to disregard relaxation because it's like relaxation. You're just laying. You're not doing anything. However, I've learned relaxation is another very vital component of my joy spectrum. So it's just, those are just some examples.
I love that. Can I just show you? And if you're on the YouTube channel, you'll be able to see. But because of quarantine, and there's my treadmill and my bike that I hired. And I've got some Pilates equipment down there as well and stuff like that. So, and I am so grateful. And I know that you did 2 weeks quarantine as well, Shannon, and you said that afterwards you went for a walk and, for an hour after you got out and you had sore calves. And I am like so grateful for this equipment every day. It's like I go on there and I move my body and I do a little Pilates thing or whatever. I was like mucking around today saying to some of the people I work with, I might be one of the like increase my fitness in quarantine.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I know. So, but I love that because you're sparking these things for me as well. In the last couple of years, since March 2020, one of the things that's brought me joy is cooking. So if I'm like busy, busy, busy creating and stuff like that, a lot of the times, and I listen to a lot of access classes, I facilitate a lot of access classes, do all of that, but I really love music too. So, and I've got a great sound system at home. So a lot of times I'll put on my Sonos and put on some music that I really like and cook and pour a glass of wine. And it's like the joy that I get from that is like, is so contributes to me and my body, which I get what you're talking about is that when it contributes to you and your body, it's going to start contributing to your businesses, your life, projects, money flows, relationships, all of it. Love this. Thank you. Thank you for bringing the joy today.
Yeah. And that's exactly right. And I think that I just really want to emphasize it, what you just said, how it contributes to. I don't think that that's an avenue that's been explored enough in the world. It's like you really have to know what you know in order to allow that component of creation to exist in your living. Since most people function it's like if you're listening to this right now, it's like how much of your day is dominated by I should do this rather than, well, where's the joy that will contribute to the growth of everything working better in my life in the universe. So I want to extrapolate on the joy component again. It's like joy, I believe, is one of the elements of consciousness. It's one of the resources. Literally, it's a resource of consciousness. And it is something that, since joy is free, it's free. And for some reason, joy is really looked down upon. I know some reasons why joy is looked down upon. Joy is a very difficult energy to control. And when people are joyful, it's much more difficult to control them. So if everyone was joyful, it would be a really different world that we'd live in. And so one of the resources of consciousness is joy. So when you're cultivating more joy, choosing more joy, accessing more joy, being more joyful, you are accessing more consciousness. And that's really one of the big keys to creation is accessing of consciousness. And I think a lot of people get very like when you say consciousness, it's like saying money. It's like this massive thing that nobody really knows what it is. And you have all these points of view and presupposed expectations about what it might be. But if you start to look at consciousness is comprised of a lot of elements or resources, joy is one of them. Ease is another one of them. Receiving.
Receiving and gratitude as well. And I love that you said that you cannot control joy because you actually cannot control any of those elements. It's like, so thank you, because I wonder how many people don't choose those elements based on they actually don't desire to be out of control either.
We give up so much in exchange for control. I don't know why control got to be such this valuable, big, important thing. I don't even know who the fuck sold control as this like take control and give up everything for it,
Well, I mean, I'm one of the biggest control freaks in the world, and it's like, God, I've learned to change that over the years, and also learned to use it when required. It's like, like control a situation or sort of step in so that you can change something, but it's different. It's like when you wake up and you have this sense that you've got to control everything. Like I always say, show me one day in your life where you go to bed at night and your day showed up the way you thought it was going to. Not one. So where the hell do we think that we can create this, controlling our future or controlling our business or controlling our money flows or controlling our relationships? It's like, you can't. It's not predictable. It's by choice. And like you said, the receiving.
And as soon as you start controlling, disconnect, you separate. Control goes between you and that infinite ask and receive energy. I
Yeah.
feel like it's easy that when you hear that or when you say that, it sort of sounds like this thing in theory. But if you take this literally, that when you start controlling, you're disconnecting from this mechanism, this magical mechanism of ask and receive. The control is a very powerful. It's so potent. Control is like it's like Roundup. It just kills everything. It kills everything. So yes, it
So
has
Roundup
away.
is what you put on weeds, in case you guys don't know. And she's mentioning Roundup. Yeah, it does. Well, yeah, you're right. It goes on weeds, but Roundup
It
kills
doesn't
everything.
just kill weeds, it kills
Yeah.
everything. So it's if you're going to use it, you need to really know what it is, and you need to know how to use it with awareness, because
That
control,
is
so but
well put.
and control is, so that's another aspect of money. It's like when you apply control to money, you're missing out on all the ways in which money, resource, revenue, energy, receiving, and gifting can come in ways in which you can't understand or imagine right now. And that's a massive component of allowing the universe to contribute, is it has to be able to do it in the way it can, not the ways in which you can control it. That's, I would say that's
Yeah,
one of my
I
other
love that.
golden keys.
I love that. So, I mean, I could talk to you forever about a billion things. So, what I'm going to ask you to, towards the ending of this is I mean, you just said that is one of your key things, but what else would you say is a key point of view that people
Right.
can change in order to start creating money?
Well, yeah. So liking money or hating money. I mean, a key point of view to actually having money is actually liking money.
Yeah. That's okay. So then, okay, let's start with that. Do you have any tools about how people can start to like money?
Yeah, first you have to be honest with yourself about what your point of view and your whole attitude and energy towards money is. Like, for example, my husband was, I would say, was a victim of pretty dynamic financial abuse growing up. I think a lot of us are, in ways that we don't even realize or understand. It's
Yeah.
sort of like if you were ever told like that, like, you cost too much money, or you're a burden, or it was even just thought at you that, like, you're too expensive. That wasn't what went on with my husband and his household, but it was like, if you do this, I'll give you money, and if you don't do this, you get no money, kind of a thing. So money was used as like this form of domination and control rather than as a source of joy or freedom. So for him, money is connected to all of these really horrible energies. And so, like, it's been years of showing him how money can actually be a good friend too. It's not just like this massive source of abuse. So you have to really look at, like, what are all the energies, thoughts, all the attitudes attached to money in your world. It's like, and then be really honest with yourself. Like, when I first started turning my financial situation around in my 20s, like, my dad actually said to me, he's like, well, you hate money. And I was so offended. I was like, fuck you, no I don't. And then I looked at it, and after the days afterwards, like, it really stuck in my world. And I looked at it days after that and realized, like, every time I thought about money, I was resentful. And I was like, oh my God, that's what he's talking about. Like, I do hate money. Like, I so resent that it exists at all. And that was me recognizing my initial, like, attitude and point of view about money. And then the way I changed that was to look at, like, who do I know that actually, like, has some sort of peace with money and isn't totally crazy around money. And it was really hard to find anybody, but I had one person. And then I started, like, duplicating her energy around money, and it was like I could do it for like 5 seconds because it felt so gross and so foreign. The energy of liking money or having peace with money
Yeah.
was so foreign to me. It was like gross. I was like, oh, that's too much. It was weird. But every day I duplicate it 1 second longer, and then another second longer, and soon I could do it for like 40 minutes, and then soon I became it.
Oh, I love that. That's a great tool. Thank you,
Cool.
Shannon. Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. So, anything else that I mean, God, there's a billion things, like I said, that where we could go here. So,
It's such a huge area,
yeah.
because I don't really believe that when we're talking about money, I think a very small aspect of it is money, and the much bigger aspect of it attaches to all these other things in our
Yeah, like
universes.
we mentioned, the receiving, the joy, even the gratitude for money, all of that. And the one of the things I used to do, because I know that I had in my world a point of view about money as well. I didn't resent it. I just didn't. somewhere in my world I thought that it was bad, terrible, awful to have it. Like that, I guess that saying, that implant of, the money is the root of all evil. Like I'd like to create, 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 but the money thing was really getting to me. So what I ended up doing was I used to sit on planes, and you know how like they have they have these documentaries or these lifestyle shows and stuff. And I'd be working on my computer and I'd put one of those lifestyle shows on in the background that was sort of like, the rich kids of, Hollywood or something. And, this 6 year old is getting its new, Porsche, little convertible car, like ridiculous amounts of money, right? Or like, someone who has their whole house made out of gold, like this, just like to this extreme amount of money. And I would watch these things and I'd have my headphones on and I'd have my, glass of champagne or whatever, my computer, I'd work. But I watch it and I would, and this is the Access Consciousness Clearing Statement, which if you've been listening to my podcast, you'd know about it. And if not, you can go to theclearingstatement.com. And everything that would show up, like in my world, that I would go, oh my God, that's revolting, or that's crass, or that's, all these different adjectives that I had that I wasn't really aware I had until I watched these shows. And then I would pock and pod, like I destroy and uncreate every point of view I have that is maybe, a too sick of display of wealth sort of thing. Right and wrong, good and bad, pock and pod, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds. Because it's like, am I going to live like that? No. But would I like to receive that amount of money and more? Yes. Because one thing that I have gained awareness of big time is what we are all like actualizing in the world with the money that we have been creating is just like, just the beginning.
What can I say, that the what we've been creating, actualizing in the world with the money we have been creating, she means like me and her and the other, we know some other people who are like, she actually means specific people. I don't think you mean everybody.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I mean, Gary, Dane, you,
Well,
me.
so a really big component for me with money was I had the same thing where money was like, bad. Obviously I had the resentment, but I also I did not know what I would do when I had the money. And a huge component of the money coming to me with more ease is knowing what I want to create with money. And one of those is like the restoration and like preservation or the health of the earth. So that's why now that I've made all this, now that I've spent 20 years earning money, now I can contribute my finances to the organizations and the people who are on the ground doing the work to pull the plastic out of the ocean, to take care of the rhinoceroses, to reforest, etc. And that's, if I didn't have that component, like if I didn't know that that's what I wanted to do, I think I'd flounder a lot with money, because you sort of like only create money. I don't know if this is for you, but I need to like have like a vision in order to generate the money to like actualize that vision. I don't really like, to me, it helps a lot to have a target. For me, it really helps.
Yeah, I noticed that I did have that, and I tell you, like quick funny story is when I was in a relationship with Brendan Watt for 8 years, and when the relationship broke up, it was like 3 or 4 months later, and I remember talking to your dad, to Gary, and I said, really weird. I was like, my money flows have just gone down.
Hmm.
Like I'm not making as much money. And he said, yeah, because you don't have something that you have to create for anymore. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, well, you don't have to pay for Brendan anymore. And I cracked up laughing and I went, oh my God, you are so correct. And I actually spoke to Brendan about it and he was like, please don't do that. And so then I noticed, oh, so what else do I desire? And it was looking at these different things that are investment, etc. So I noticed that energy showed up. But then what I also have been doing is pock and potting, where I do have to have that carrot so that I can just receive even more without that reference that I need to have that. And in truth, it's like, I mean, I'm the same as you. It's like the earth, and contributing to people who are stewards of the earth is a massive, yes for me. So it's like whatever that shows up like and whatever that can be, it's like, I will keep receiving, possibilities all around the world so that I can contribute to that for sure, like big time.
Yeah.
Oh, I adore you. Thank you so much, Shannon, for being on
Thank
here.
you so much. Thank you so much, Simone, for being so great always. Like, really, I like how you started this conversation with back when we met, because I just think like, God, that was like literally, like, we could say it was 20, maybe it was 20 years ago, 21 years
It was
ago.
21, yeah.
but it was like 20,000 years ago, and what a different world we
Yeah,
live in today, and like how far we've
that
come.
is
Like
very true.
look at how fucking far we've come. If any, like
Yeah.
look, and I'm really, you are genuinely like, you have chosen greater all the way along, for better or worse, no matter if it was pretty or ugly. You have chosen greater, been greater. You like you give me hope.
Hmm. Thank you. I'll thank you. I received that. Thank you, Shannon. I'm really grateful. Thank you. And there's a lot of mutual admiration, I think, between us. There really is, though. There really is. It's like you have inspired me with business, with everything, like with the way you be in the world and your beautiful directness that I've always enjoyed. It's like, thank you for you. So people can find you on talktotheentities.com, also accessconsciousness.com, and also I think your website is shannon-o'hara.com. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. And the
Cool.
my podcast is the Consciousness Anywhere podcast, which Simone was talking
Yeah.
about in the beginning of the show. I'm not hiding. It's pretty easy to find me if you want to find me.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah. I know I always say when people ask me and I go, well, if you Google my name, you can find everything
Yeah,
because so far
exactly.
there is no other Simone Milasas. It's like
Oh, you're
I'm the
very
only one in
lucky.
the world.
You're actually
Yeah,
really lucky. There's a lot of Shannon O'Haras, and they're all photographers, which is
right.
super
There you
interesting.
go.
And they're all female photographers.
There you go. Well, so far there's no other Simone Milasas that I found. So there you go. So we'll have all those details in the show notes anyway. Is there anything that you've got coming up that you want to talk about, or anything you want to leave the listeners with? Anything at all?
That is such an interesting question. Anything I've got coming up that I want to talk about? Because actually, right now, my schedule is pretty. I mean, I've always got things coming up because, like, I'm an OCD creative compulsive creator. I'm a creative. I'm an obsessive compulsive creator. But really, like, there's just so much space ahead, and it's like something that I guess my creative thing right here to leave everybody with is like, where do you want to be at the end of your life? Like recently, I've been
Yeah.
really looking at like I've been noticing I've been getting super distracted with like doing stuff today and stuff. And I'm like, wait a second, like when I'm 90, like what do I want the energy of my life in the world to be? And like changing the direction of where my changing the choices I make today to lead to that more. So having that more expanded perspective has really been like my joy for creating, at least in the last few days. Like, yeah.
Yeah. And you can go check out her website and find out what she's got on. But also, don't forget to check out the money series that she has on her podcast. We'll put the link
Yeah.
in there as well because she does talk to some really brilliant, inspirational people. And I love the way Shannon, you said you chose all the people that had said something or gifted you in some way the change that you had with money. And all the people that you interviewed, pretty much I had the same point of view. So brilliant people. So. Don't miss out on that. And just again, thank you so much. And you're in Stockholm now, right? No, not
Malmo.
Stockholm. Malmo. Malmo. I like Malmo. It's a beautiful little town.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, have fun, and I will talk to you later. And thank you so much, everybody, for joining us here. And, feel free to share it, subscribe, do all that stuff, give us a rating, all of that. And love you guys, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.
If you're enjoying this podcast and have a question or topic you'd like me to address, please leave a review wherever you are listening. The best way for me to know what it is you want to hear about is to send in your questions, and we actually read all the reviews that come in. So let us know which episodes you loved and what you want to hear about next, right there in the podcast reviews. And thank you. Truly, truly grateful.